Imagine entering a dark cave 40,000 years ago. Outside, an ice age world stretches across Europe. Snow covers the landscape. Cold winds sweep across the open land. And somewhere inside this cave, an ancient human sits beside a small fire. In their hands is a tiny piece of mammoth ivory. They begin carving. Not a weapon, not a tool, but a bird. A bird so tiny it could fit on your thumbnail. And somehow, that tiny bird survives for 40,000 years. In 2025, archaeologists working inside Hohle Fels Cave in Germany discovered something extraordinary. Two tiny bird figurines lying only about 5 feet apart, hidden inside ancient Ice Age layers. And on July 29, 2026, the discovery was officially revealed to the world. But the real mystery is not how old these birds are. It is why someone made them. Hohle Fels is not an ordinary cave. It is one of the most important Ice Age archaeological sites in Europe. Over the years, archaeologists have discovered ancient tools, animal remains, figurines, and even musical instruments inside it. Now, two more incredible objects have joined that collection. Both were carved from mammoth ivory, and both are incredibly small. One of the birds is almost complete. It appears to be resting, and researchers think it may possibly represent a bird sitting on or near eggs. The second bird is incomplete, but its wings are spread wide. Perhaps it was flying, perhaps it was landing, or maybe it was showing some kind of display. We cannot know for certain. And that uncertainty makes the discovery even more fascinating, because imagine the person who created them. There were no modern machines, no electric lights, no metal carving tools, no microscopes, just stone tools, mammoth ivory, and human hands. Yet the details are astonishing. Someone carefully shaped the ivory tiny feature by tiny feature. They understood the shape of a bird. They noticed its body, its wings, its posture, and then they transformed that observation into art. But why? That is the question archaeologists still cannot answer. Maybe the birds had a symbolic meaning. Maybe they were connected to rituals. Maybe they were personal objects. Maybe they represented animals that were important to the people who made them. Or perhaps they were simply beautiful things, something made because someone wanted to create it. And that possibility tells us something important about Ice Age humans. They were not only trying to survive, they were creating. They were imagining. They were observing the world around them and turning what they saw into something new. Think about the world they lived in. There were no supermarkets, no houses with heating, no hospitals, no modern medicine. Every day could be dangerous. Food had to be found, fire had to be maintained, shelter had to be protected, and the weather could change everything. Yet in the middle of that difficult world, someone found the time to carve a tiny bird. That tells us something about the human mind. Survival was important, but imagination mattered too. And Hohle Fels gives us even more evidence. The cave is famous for other Ice Age artworks, including the Venus of Hohle Fels, animal figurines, and fragments of ancient musical instruments. A famous bone flute was also discovered there. So these people were not simply hunters. They were making music. They were creating art. They were using symbols. They were telling stories. And they were thinking about the world around them. Now imagine that tiny bird again. Someone held it thousands of generations ago. Maybe they showed it to another person. Maybe it belonged to a family. Maybe it was carried around. Maybe it was used during a ritual. Or maybe it simply sat somewhere inside the cave while people gathered around the fire. We will probably never know. The person who carved it is gone. Their voice is gone. Their name is gone. Their world is gone. But the bird remained, buried beneath the cave floor for roughly 40,000 years until archaeologists finally found it. And there is something almost emotional about that. A tiny object made by someone who lived in a completely different world has survived long enough to reach us. It connects two moments separated by tens of thousands of years. The moment when an Ice Age human created it, and the moment when a modern archaeologist held it again. And perhaps that is the real mystery hidden inside Hohle Fels. The mystery is not only what these birds represent, it is what they tell us about ourselves. Because 40,000 years ago, humans were already creating things that had no obvious survival purpose. They were making art, they were making music, they were telling stories, they were imagining, and they were leaving pieces of their minds behind for people they could never meet. Today, we can only look at two tiny birds and wonder, who carved them? Why were they made? What did they mean? And what was going through the mind of the person holding that piece of mammoth ivory 40,000 years ago? We may never know the answers, but one thing is clear. The Ice Age was cold. Life was difficult. The world was dangerous. Yet the human imagination was already alive. And hidden inside a German cave, two tiny birds have survived to prove it.